Imagination, the telescope of consciousness. Admin. The role of imagination and why it is underutilized. In a world of utter separation and disillusionment, it can be a very difficult task to imagine how we, the human race, could ever become unified through the expression of love as a primary behavior. Love expresses itself in the attitude of oneness and equality, and perceives all life as infinite beings, no matter how they are veiled in terms of personality and human cloak. However, we are programmed to rush to anger or defensiveness anytime something or someone threatens, diminishes, impedes or aggravates our will and sense of security. In a world of constant surveillance, of diminishing freedoms, of steamrolling secularism, it is not easy to deny our programming. This programming is based on two interdependent and primary features of human reality. 1. Separation. 2. Deception. Each of us is separate and each of us lives in deception. This is a simple fact. Separation begins the moment we don a human body, birth. We are instantly separated in three-dimensional reality. We are sealed away inside our body. It is a very strange experience to begin to see the world as separate from ourselves, and that we exist separate from everyone and everything else. We become programmed by this prominent feature of reality to feel vulnerable and dependent. The deception of our world is its illusory basis that describes a consciousness as an 80-year lifespan on average that is human with the possibly divine, yet undefined spiritual component. Because of this potential divine spark, we are allowed to believe in soul, but it remains only a belief, and therefore the deception is complete. We do not know our true self. You might want to read the 5th interview of Dr. Jamison Neruda for more detail on the hologram of deception, the suppression of the imagination. The imagination is a faculty within the heart and mind of every individual. It is that part of us that can exercise a vision that is counterintuitive to the reality that surrounds us. Just as our brain can use a telescope to see distant galaxies, the imagination is like a telescope of our consciousness. It allows us to reach out to the infinite. We are each inundated with stories and images of war, social dysfunction, freedom-stealing policies and technologies, all of which instill a sense of doom and gloom. Our imaginations are sat on by these heavy objects that we can generally call suppression events. These suppression events introduce, over time, a false sense that we are fundamentally flawed and disempowered. We begin to believe the lie that our lives, or parts thereof, are mistakes that demand corrections or modifications. And where do you suppose those corrections will come from? Which government or religious institutions will correct our mistakes? The same institutions that design and issue the suppression events in the first place. Exactly. The problem is that we have allowed our imaginations to be programmed by the suppression events, and our imaginations have largely become atrophied as a result. Our imaginations are likened to a muscle that must be exercised in order to lift a heavy weight. In order to throw off the suppression events that literally sit on us, we may find value in using our imaginations regularly. Applying the imagination. Now the question becomes, in what manner or method do I exercise my imagination? In the 5th interview of Dr. Jamison Neruda, I recommend a specific practice called quantum pause. This is a good starting point to exercise and expand the imagination. I say starting point, because I strongly suggest individuals adapt the quantum pause practice to themselves. Imagination has been marginalized by academia in much the same way as words like myth or intuition. These are word concepts that sit at the fringe of acceptability, and yet they are, in many ways, the power concepts of our time. How these words became marginalized is an interesting study in itself, but the focus of this article is not on that, but rather on suggesting that each of you might want to find a way to exercise your imaginations. But equally important is the way you apply your imagination, and to that extent, I suggest you have a look at quantum pause, and see if there are any aspects of that tool that you could use to formulate your own technique. These are some of the key aspects to consider when developing your own. Rhythmic breathing. Visualization of specific imaginative activities. Gathering inward reception and expressing outward transmission in a cycle. Connection to earth, life and infinitude. Appreciation to Creator in communication. Integration of the heart virtues. The paradox of empowered humility. The quantum pause technique is an inner technology, based on the imagination and human physiology operating as one. It is designed to ease the suppression event's impact and effect on our emotional and mental attitudes, but more importantly, to enable us to lessen the density of the veil that surrounds us. This helps us see with greater clarity, and to understand our infinite selves a little more. Tiny effects can shift the well-being of an individual. Similarly, tiny changes in the imaginative faculty, when it is aligned to the heart virtues, and the expression of love, equality, and oneness, can assist all of us. Those 7 key ingredients mentioned above are a recipe for your imagination to grow in its potency, and to ensure it is applied to the benefit of all.